Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to continue our college football predictions with week 11. And last week was not the best week for me. Went 12 and 10. My total season record is 131 and 79. And while I thought initially last week was a slow week, it made up for in yet another chaotic week that we had in college football. So, that being said, this week looking at the games, is possible for chaos, but we'll talk about a few games that's gonna what I think might be a little interesting. But for now, let's start off with a Friday game featuring the California Bears taking on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. California had a bye week, but last time we saw them, they took on their former Pac-12 conference member Oregon State, which they took care of very, very easily. And as for Wake Forest, they also had a bye week, and last time we saw them, they took on Stanford, where they won 27-24. And honestly, this is a game that could go in any direction. I could, yeah, no, seriously, I could see this going in any way. Right now, they're giving California 7 points because Wake Forest is at home and it's a Friday game. I'm gonna give the slight edge to the Demon Deacons to win. Although Wake Forest have been playing decent on the road this year, they have not looked that great at home. That's a problem. And the other Friday game we have is the Iowa Hawkeyes taking on the UCLA Bruins. And these two teams have had very interesting past 2 weeks, to say the least. For Iowa, they finally discovered an offense. Back-to-back weeks, 40 points, and they blew out Wisconsin at home. For UCLA, got their second conference win in Big Ten play by they beat Nebraska on the road. That is very, very impressive. Shout out to Sean Foster. And right now, the way Iowa's momentum is heading, I have to go with the Hawkeyes to win. They finally found themselves an offense. Their defense has also been showing a lot of promise. But yeah, I gotta go with Iowa to win. Next we have is the Florida Gators taking on the Texas Longhorns. Florida, they put up a good fight against Georgia. I was really impressed. Unfortunately, they did through a very costly interception towards in the late in the fourth quarter that made the score look much lopsided than you think. But it was a really, really close game. I gotta give an applaud to Florida Gators for a good effort. Hopefully, they're gonna need a lot of that when they take on the Texas Longhorns, who last time we saw them was they were on the road taking on Vanderbilt and they escaped with their lives. And since this game's back at home, Texas had a chance to get healthy. I sadly don't see a scenario where Florida's winning. But I do see a scenario of but if Florida played like they played last week, I could see them making this a very interesting game. And following that, we have the Syracuse Orange taking on the Boston College Eagles. Syracuse come from behind win over Virginia Tech. They had to use overtime to get the win. And Boston College, they actually had a bye week last week. But last time we saw them was against Virginia Tech. But right now, that school things have been looking shaky for Boston College, to say the least. So this game, they are giving Boston College 2 points. And this is one of those that it can go in any direction. I'm going to go with the favorite team in this instance. I'm going to go ahead and take Boston College to win. But don't be surprised if Syracuse win. Do not be surprised. Next, we have Minnesota Golden Gophers taking on the Rutgers Scarlet Knight. Minnesota going on the road, beating Illinois. And Rutgers, last time we saw them, they had a bye week last week, but we saw them lose to USC on the road. And their hot start that they had to the season is slowly, slowly fading away. And I think against Minnesota right now is playing really good football right now. I gotta go with the road team, the hot team, Minnesota, to win. This one's actually going to be really interesting. We have the Miami Hurricanes taking on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, and I sense a huge trap game for the Miami Hurricanes. Yes, they won and they covered barely against Duke. But they're taking on Georgia Tech, which they could possibly get Haynes King back from injury. He's been out the last 2 games. Georgia Tech had a bye week last week. And historically showing, whenever Miami takes on Georgia Tech, whether at home or on the road, Miami usually don't play up to their best. And last year's game was a huge example of that. If you want to know what happened last year, let's just say Mario Cristobal was an idiot against this team. So this game, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm really leaning towards Georgia Tech to pull off a major upset against Miami. If they could, because one thing I learned about Miami is that their defense, especially their pass defense, is not good. But they're okay against the run. I just know they give up a lot of passing yards. Last week was a testament of that. And then Georgia Tech, what they do best is run the ball, rather with their running back or with their quarterback himself. And you know what? I'm going to cause a little chaos. I'm going with the upset. I'm taking Georgia Tech to win at home. It's a trap game for Miami. Georgia Tech has historically given Miami problems in the past. I'm going with the Yellow Jackets to win a huge, huge upset. Next we have is West Virginia taking on Cincinnati. And West Virginia had a bye week last week, but they won on the road against Arizona last time we saw them. Cincinnati also coming off a bye, but they lost to Colorado on the road last time we saw them. And with this game being at home, and both of these teams are fairly evenly matched, I gotta lean towards the home team Bearcats to win. And then we have what would have been my first pick for game of the week, but the game I chose, there's a reason why I chose that game at game of the week, but we'll talk about that later. We have the Georgia Bulldogs taking on the Ole Miss Rebels. Georgia, they struggled against Florida in the rivalry game. Carson Beck throwing 3 interceptions. Yeah, the offense the offense the entire year has been underperforming. And defense itself, unlike past years, this ain't the same Georgia Bulldogs that I thought was going to run away with the college title this year. Meanwhile, Ole Miss, they're looking like they're beginning to figure it out. They put up 60 points on the road against Arkansas. Which, I mean, yeah, it's true. It's not that typical hard to do, but 63 points is 63 points regardless. In this game, oh boy, this is going to be one of the biggest games of the week. And I know Georgia's favored to win, but Ole Miss, they got the offense. But if you get Georgia, what I learned is if you get Georgia in a shootout, it doesn't bode well for them. But if Georgia defense come out to play like they did against Texas, I think the Bulldogs could do just enough to win this game. But I'm expecting a really good ball game for this one. And next we have the Clemson Tigers taking on the Virginia Tech Hokies. Clemson, what happened? Losing at home to Louisville? And then Virginia Tech, they lost on the road to Syracuse in a game that they were leading most throughout. So for this game, now I don't know if Ryan Drones, the starting quarterback for Virginia Tech's playing. If he's not playing, I'm gonna lean towards the Tigers to run away. But if he does play, I'm probably gonna still pick Clemson. But it's just gonna be much closer than what the people think. I expect, let's say, a 31-17 final score. That's fair enough. Next, we have a very rare in-state rivalry game between the Duke Blue Devils taking on the North Carolina State Wolfpack. And for Duke, they played a decent game against Miami. In fact, they were at one point leading by double digits. The second and third quarter were really good quarters for Duke. But then Miami, the hurricane happened and they were blown out the rivers. And to be fair, Duke's offense made a lot of mistakes, which caused the scoreboard to be much more larger than you think. Meanwhile, NC State picked up an easy win over Stanford, and they're starting to feel a little bit about themselves. And with this game being played played at NC State. I do have to go with the slight edge of the Wolfpack to winning this game. And yeah, I'm the only one that feels like this rivalry rarely happens in football. I can't be the only one that thinks that. And now we have the Michigan Wolverines taking on the Indiana Hoosiers, the unbeaten Indiana Hoosiers. Michigan losing at home to Oregon. It's just fair that it's just we all think we're all in agreement that Michigan just don't have enough this year. Enough of what? We don't know. And as for Indiana, it looked shaky at first. They got in a 10-0 hole. Fortunately, they scored 47 unanswered. So, in what day of age would Indiana be 2 touchdown favorites over the defending national champion Wolverines? That is crazy. And I do have Indiana. By the way, I do have Indiana winning this game. I trust their offense a lot more than I trust Michigan's offense. So I'm going to just roll with the Indiana Hoosiers to win. And if you asked me before the season about this game, you'd call me crazy. And now we have the Iowa State Cyclones taking on the Kansas Jayhawks. Iowa State losing its first game of the season to Texas Tech. And it's putting their playoff hopes in a bit of a standstill right now. I do believe they have a shot to getting in, but they're going to need a miracle and a prayer, and also winning out, which includes beating BYU to do it. Meanwhile, Kansas, they lost. Last time we saw them, they lost to Kansas State in a game that they had won, but like in typical Kansas fashion this year, their inability to finish games has been their problem this year. So Iowa State, I think they're gonna rebound in this one. I think they get the win. And Kansas, if they lose this game, they're not gonna be bowling this year. And now we have the Colorado Buffaloes taking on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Texas Tech coming off a huge road win over Iowa State, an upset win at that. That school is just very, very inconsistent this year. And meanwhile, Colorado, they had a bye week last week, but last time we saw them, they had a very decent showing against Cincinnati. It wasn't a blowout, but the offense and defense, they played steady. And that's what you want to see out of Colorado. And since I have jumped on the Colorado bandwagon, since they now got 6 wins, I cannot get off. I got to roll with the Buffaloes to win. And now we have South Carolina taking on Vanderbilt Commodores. South Carolina picked up a huge home upset win over Texas A&M, and looking back on it, I knew I should have picked them. I knew I should have picked South Carolina to win, but I didn't. So, what was me there? Meanwhile, Vanderbilt in their 5,000 dogs went on the road and beat Auburn again. Well, at least Pavia did. And Vanderbilt is now going bowling. Who would have had that on your bingo card? Vanderbilt in their 10,000 dogs. So in this game, this one's actually going to be a really good game, SEC matchup. Who would ever... I mean, those words coming out of my mouth of these two teams, yeah, that shows you how chaotic the SEC has been this year. And for this game, I am going to give the slight edge over South Carolina, but I'm going to warn them. Do not overestimate Vanderbilt. Do not underestimate them. Because them and their 10,000 dogs will come. They will come for you. And you'll end up like Alabama, Auburn, and Kentucky. And then real quick, Maryland's taking on the number 1 ranked team, Oregon. I don't really see a scenario where Maryland wins. So Oregon right now is playing the best football of anybody, and not only in the Big Ten, but in the country. Yeah, I think Oregon should take care of this one. And like with this one, I'm not gonna be very, very lackluster with this one either. I'll take Tennessee to win, but I will say this: Tennessee is known not to cover in these past couple of games. So if you're betting on this game, keep that in mind. And now we have Oklahoma State Cowboys taking on the TCU Horned Frogs. Oklahoma State, what is happening to this school? Didn't they start off 3-0, and now they lost 6 straight games? most recently taking an L to Arizona State. Meanwhile, TCU, they had a tough road loss over to Baylor, but in that game, someone just had to lose. Both teams played very, very well in that game. And because of that, hopefully TCU feeds off of the momentum they had the past couple of weeks. I got to roll with the Horned Frogs to win. So Oklahoma State, you're probably not going to go bowling this year. And now we have the UCF Scarlet Knights taking on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Almost forgot their mascots there. UCF ended their 5-game losing streak by beating the ever-living crap out of the Arizona Wildcats. And they thought Arizona was going to be a top team in this conference. Arizona State, on the other hand, picked up a win over Oklahoma State. And in this game, I think this one could go in any direction. And because I said that and given that Arizona State's favored by 3 points, I'm going to roll with Arizona State to win. Let's move on. And now we have the Fraud Bowl. Oklahoma taking on Missouri. Oklahoma did pick up a win last week, but it was against Maine, and let's be real, it's not that hard to do, especially when you're a SEC school and Maine is whatever they are. In Missouri, they had a bye week last week, but last time we saw them, their fraud play came into fruition when they got shut out by the Alabama Crimson Tide. And in that game, they did lose their quarterback to I think a hand injury. But I don't know if he's going to come back for this one. He probably should. He probably might come back for this game. So, in this matchup, it's another one of those that could go in any direction. But I am going to give the slight edge to Missouri to win. If their offense could get going enough, I'm going to give them the win over the Sooners. And now we have the Washington Huskies taking on the Penn State Scarlet Knights. I mean, not Scarlet Knights. Nittany Lions. Where did I get the word Scarlet Knights from? Anyway, Washington picked up a win over USC, and Penn State only scored 6 points on offense. Their only touchdown they scored that game was on a defensive pick 6. Come on now. And so it goes to show you that Penn State cannot beat Ohio State for nothing. Luckily, they do have a rebound opponent against Washington. I'm going to go ahead and take Penn State to win. But I will say, their score might be a little closer than what you think. Just keep that in mind. And now we have the Virginia Cavaliers taking on the Pitt Panthers. Last time we saw Virginia, they got destroyed at home by the North Carolina Tar Heels. Pitt got destroyed last week against SMU in a game I thought was going to be a really good battle. SMU was like, yeah, no. We're going to take care of business and we'll beat up on Pitt. Now, in this game, I actually do think Pitt should get a rebound win. I mean, their SEC hopes isn't over yet, but they're going to have to pull some miracles if they want to keep it up. And then we have the Holy War. The BYU Cougars taking on the Utah Utes. BYU, the lone undefeated team in the Big 12. They had a bye week last week. Utah, I think, also had the same, but these schools are heading in 2 different directions that no one's seen coming. For BYU, like I said, they're undefeated. And Utah, because of their injuries on offense, they're heading in the wrong direction. So in this game, I'm actually surprised BYU is only favored by 4 points. But this one, I am going to go with BYU to win. They just got a little more offense than Utah does. Utah has no offense at all. I mean, they got a defense which could possibly lead this to be a low-scoring affair. But I got to go with the Mormons to pick up a win. And last but not least, we have my game of the week. The Alabama Crimson Tide taking on the LSU Tigers. And the reason why I chose this as my game of the week and not Georgia and Ole Miss, because I think this is an elimination game. Whoever loses this game, kiss their college football playoff hopes goodbye. And whoever wins this game, pretty much could kiss their college football playoff hopes into fruition. Now let's talk about the pre-bye weeks of both teams. Alabama shut out against Missouri, and luckily it was at home, and they looked like like the Alabama that we're accustomed to knowing. LSU, last time we saw them, they lost on the road to Texas A&M. Their offense did not have a good day, and the defense, when A&M changed quarterbacks, the defense did not have an answer for it. So in this one, I've actually gone back and forth with this game because this is going to be a Death Valley at night game. And if you know anything about the Death Valley at night, it's that much harder to play in this building. I've gone, and again, back and forth, I went with this pick. But I'm going to give the safe bet for me is to take the Alabama Crimson Tide to win. But part of me wants to go LSU because they're at home, and I do believe in their offense just a little more. But because I kind of don't believe in LSU's defense, I'm gonna roll with Alabama to win, pick up a huge win, and they're basically way their schedule is set up. They do have a path to the playoff, the 12 seed playoff, and that concludes my Week 11 predictions. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Gamble safely, and I'll see you next time.